Welcome to Scaring YouTube. It's another chilling episode. Tonight's story will take you deep into the heart of the wilderness, where silence hides secrets far more terrifying than you can imagine. But before we begin, make sure you're in a safe place, because once you enter the Forgotten Woods, you might not find your way out. Let's dive in. Let's the story begin. There's a small town nestled at the edge of an ancient forest that locals call the Forgotten Woods. It's the kind of place that doesn't show up on maps, where people don't talk to outsiders, and where the woods seem to whisper when the wind blows just right. For decades, townsfolk have warned anyone who would listen, never enter the woods after dark, not even during the day if you can help it. Something evil lurks among the trees, something ancient and hungry. Of course, most people laughed off the warnings. Superstition, they called it. But those who ignored the advice, those brave souls who ventured in, thinking they were stronger than any old wives' tales, never returned. This story begins with a group of 4 friends, young adults eager for adventure. There was Josh, the level-headed leader of the group, Sarah, his girlfriend, smart but impulsive, Matt, the thrill-seeker, and Kate, who was always skeptical of anything remotely supernatural. They'd heard the rumors about the Forgotten Woods and thought it would be fun to spend a weekend camping there, proving once and for all that the legends were nothing more than fairy tales. They arrived in town on a bright Friday morning, parked their car, and began the long trek into the woods. The trees towered above them, blocking out most of the sunlight. As they ventured deeper, an eerie silence settled in, so thick it seemed to muffle even the sound of their footsteps. Josh had the map, or at least what he thought was a map. It was old, hand-drawn, something he found in an antique store near the town's edge. It didn't look official, but he figured it would get them to the heart of the forest, where they planned to set up camp. By the time they reached their destination, the sun was dipping behind the hills, and a creeping fog began to roll through the trees. They quickly set up their tents and built a fire, hoping the warmth would dispel the unsettling atmosphere. It didn't. Night fell, and with it came a cold unlike anything they had ever felt. It seeped into their bones, making their skin crawl. The forest, which had been quiet before, now seemed to come alive with strange sounds. Twigs snapping, leaves rustling, and something that sounded like breathing. Just animals, Matt said, laughing it off, but his laughter was hollow. Sarah sat closer to Josh, pulling her jacket tighter around her. Even Kate, the biggest skeptic, looked uneasy. Around midnight, Josh suggested they turn in for the night. They doused a fire and climbed into their tents, but sleep didn't come easily. The air felt thick, oppressive, as if the forest itself was pressing down on them. That's when they heard it, a distant scream, echoing through the trees. They all sat up at once, eyes wide in the darkness. "Did you hear that?" Kate whispered, her voice trembling. Josh grabbed a flashlight and unzipped the tent. "Stay here," he ordered, though Sarah insisted on coming with him. The two of them crept toward the sound, the beam of the flashlight cutting through the fog like a knife. They walked for what felt like hours, the scream echoing again and again, always just out of reach. Suddenly, the beam of the flashlight flickered and went out. "Great," Josh muttered, shaking it. But it was no use. They were plunged into darkness. Then came the footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving toward them through the fog. Josh held Sarah's hand tight as they backed away, but the footsteps quickened, becoming frantic, almost desperate. Suddenly, from the mist, a figure appeared. It was a man, disheveled and gaunt, his eyes wide with terror. "Run," he gasped, collapsing in front of them. "It's coming! It's coming for you!" Before Josh could react, the man was yanked back into the fog by something unseen. The sound of tearing flesh filled the air, followed by gurgled screams that were quickly silenced. Panicked, Josh and Sarah ran back to camp, their breath coming in ragged gasps. When they arrived, Matt and Kate were already packing up, having heard the commotion. "We need to leave. Now," Josh said, his voice shaking. But as they gathered their things, a shadow passed between the trees. It was tall, unnaturally tall, and it moved with a strange, jerking motion, as if it wasn't used to walking on two legs. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness, watching them, waiting. Matt, always the brave one, picked up a branch and hurled it at the creature. "Get out of here," he shouted. The thing didn't flinch. Instead, it smiled, a grotesque, impossible smile that stretched too wide across its face. Then it lunged. Chaos erupted. The friends scattered, running blindly through the forest, their screams swallowed by the fog. The creature pursued them, its twisted laughter echoing in their ears. Josh, clutching Sarah's hand, ran as fast as he could, his heart pounding in his chest. But the fog grew thicker, the trees more twisted, and soon they were hopelessly lost. One by one, the other screams faded into the night, until only Josh and Sarah remained. They stumbled into a clearing, gasping for breath. The creature was gone, or so they thought. As they stood there, trying to catch their breath, the ground beneath them began to move. The dirt shifted, and from the earth, skeletal hands began to emerge, clawing at their feet. Sarah screamed as the hands pulled her down, and Josh tried to save her, but it was too late. With a final, terrified cry, she was dragged into the ground, disappearing beneath the surface. Josh stood there, frozen in horror, as the fog closed in around him. The last thing he heard was that sickening laughter, echoing through the trees as everything went dark. By morning, the forest was silent again. Days later, a search party found their campsite, but there was no sign of the four friends. Only the twisted trees stood as silent witnesses to whatever horrors had unfolded there. The townspeople knew, though. They always knew, and they knew the woods would soon claim more victims. And so, the Forgotten Woods remain, a place where no one should ever tread, but a place that still calls to the brave and the foolish alike. Thank you for joining us for this terrifying tale. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more chilling tales that will keep you up at night. Until next time, sleep with the lights on. You never know what's lurking in the dark.